Okay, well, welcome everyone to the other side of medicine. I'm Dr. Chris Stosic. You are listening to the program that brings together common sense, science, and nature. And tonight we're excited to have a special guest on the program. It's Kim Gandhi. She is the owner of Chef Fire and Fork. Did I get that right?
Food, fire, plus knives.
Oh, well, I tried. The show must go on. Kim only knows all the trouble we had tonight getting this program on the air live, but we did it, right, Kim?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let me say a little bit about Kim. She again started this company that has a lot of different chefs around the country that provide delicious food for people. Whole Foods, a lot of the chefs do that. Most of them do, I'm sure. She'll tell you a little bit more about that. But she has a family with three children, and she's been cooking for over 30 years. And she really enjoys bringing food from farm to table. Did I get that right?
You absolutely did. Yep.
All right. Tell us a little bit more about yourself because we have had quite an evening here trying to get this podcast up, but we did it. And so please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I've been like I said, I've been cooking for well over 30 years, actually, probably more like over 50 years, but we won't go there. My I always love to cook, and I cook for the family. I cook, I did a lot of different things. I actually ended up in IT versus being in chef, but about 2 years ago, I jumped back in. I actually went to work for a company that was all around the food industry and a lot around really looking at different ways to look at food, and ended up over at really this private chef company that uh, the chefs have some of the toughest jobs in the world. And as we went through the pandemic, their whole roles changed a lot. So ended up a lot of them are now cooking in people's homes, ad hoc, just like you'd go to a restaurant. Instead, now you have the restaurant come to you with the chef coming in. Many of them are very passionate about where the food comes from. They're, the closest to it, so they want to bring in the freshest ingredients. We do have plant-based chefs. We have farm-to-table chefs. We have, across the board. Of course, many of them will do anything, from meat-based down, down into the farm-to-table. But they all have a fundamental passion of not taking any of the food that they have and wasting it. They really want to figure out how can they make a difference and bring something into somebody's table that is warm, delicious, looks wonderful, and then has stories to go along with it. A lot of them talk about where the food comes from, and they intimately know where their food has been and how it got to their host or their guest plate.
Great. And so you've been involved with this company now for 2 years.
Between a year and a half and 2 years, I've been here.
So
Yeah.
it's actually not your company.
No, the company started 6 years ago. I'm a co-owner
Okay.
with the
So it is
owner.
part of your
So
company. You are a part owner. That's okay. That's
I am.
good.
Hmm. Yep.
Okay. So the passion that you have for food
Hmm.
has turned into a passion to help to be able to take food that would normally get wasted, especially food that comes from the farm, whole foods, and to be able to save that food and get it to the needy. Let's talk a little bit about that and the organization that you're involved in. Tell us some about that.
Sure. So a company called Rescue.org is this collaboration between major food distributors as well as companies that are looking for ways. Google is one of the sponsors of the company. It's a startup, and it's all about how do we eliminate, just in the US alone, we have 80 billion pounds of waste of good food. It's not expired, it's not bad, but it's going into landfills.
Okay, wait. Let's go back up. How many pounds of wasted food do we have here in this country alone?
80 billion. 80
That's
billion pounds.
80, that's 80 billion. That's with a B, billion pounds. That's almost hard to believe that that much food gets wasted every single year in this country.
Hmm. Yep.
That is despicable. And so this company rescued
Okay.
RESKUED, is that correct?
Right. .org.
Is .org is trying to do something about it. And you and 30 other people and other organizations have come together
Hmm.
to try to do something about it. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So what Google, Cargill, and then U.S. Foods and Cisco, they're the big food side, but there's a lot of other food distributors that are involved with it. They've come up with a computer program, a web-based program that we're starting the pilot in February. Actually, we're starting a pilot where the food that maybe an order is canceled by a restaurant or maybe it's canceled by a hospital. That food, where can it go? And those of us, whether it's the private chefs, it's the food pantries that are in that city, they'll be able to go out online on a daily basis and see what are those items that can be rescued. And those items that fit it, a lot of things that happen at food pantries, they'll get trucks, they'll get all sorts of like onions and things that, great, you got onions, but there's only so many onions you can consume. The food that's coming from this, it could be from, from basically from produce, farms, or it could be, from any of the other food areas that you have out there. Of course, protein would be one of them, but it's a way that the big companies are trying to figure out how to divert all of that as much as possible away from the landfills and then put it into people's bellies instead.
Well, first of all, I want to say that you can never have too many onions because onions, I'm Polish,
Yeah,
and one of the mainstays of every Polish dish is onions.
there you
When
go.
I was growing up, Kim, when you walked into my home and my parents were cooking, you smelled onions all the
Same
time.
way. You smell if you come into my house, it's onion and garlic all day long, every
I
day.
mean, I mean, people would come that never visited before and think, "What's that smell?" It smells delicious. It's onions. So you can never get enough onions for sure. But this is wonderful that once again, I'm going to repeat this because it's mind boggling to think that we have 80 billion pounds of food in the United States alone that's wasted every single year. Now, rescue.org is going to do something about that, and it's starting up in February. Is that correct?
We're starting the pilot with this program that they've built. Now, that's not to say they're the only company out there that's trying to tackle this. I think that this is something that, is long been talked about, but trying to sort out how to get the supply to the people, and get it there in a timely manner before the produce goes bad or the food goes bad. It goes beyond the point that the USDA or any regulations will allow it to be sold. That supply chain it's a huge issue out there. And so a lot of what this team is working on doing is how to get that supply chain and get it to the people that are asking for it in that timely manner. So it's not a simple problem to solve. There are other companies out there that are also tackling this because it's a known problem, and but this group, they really started off with, Google was like, look, we've done everything we can on the energy side of the world to bring down our footprint from an energy. What else is out there? And they found they were burning energy by what they were doing when they were getting rid of food. And so that's the whole start of the little nugget of how this whole thing came to be. And then they joined forces with these big companies to say, how are we going to stop this from happening? And so their pilot's going to take place starting in February. And then as quickly as we can prove out that that supply chain problem is starting to go away, we'll be able to go across many other cities and states.
So it's a consortium of a lot of different companies that are trying to make and solve this problem. Is that correct? Oops. we kind of lost Kim there for a minute, but she'll be back. Well, you're listening to The Other Side of Medicine. If you've never been here on the program with us before, welcome. We're glad that you're here with us. I've been on the radio for over 25 years, and now I've moved into podcasts. Some of you may have heard me there before. If this is the first time you're here, welcome. If you're a regular listener, we're glad you're here with us, and we're just so delighted to have Kim Gandhi with us here this evening. She was so gracious to come on the spur of the moment because I had another guest that had to cancel out because of some family issues. And so, Kim, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight at such a spur of the moment. Kim and I had a lot of problems. Well, I personally had the problem because of the technology. We were having problems with the software that we use, and we figured it out. At the last minute, we were 1 minute late from the program, but we got the job done. The show must go on. Kim is back. So sometimes the internet will come in and come out at different times. Kim, we're talking with you about this great movement that's happening with this company, rescued.org, which you're part of, plus other companies around the country are trying to figure out how to solve this waste problem of 80 billion pounds of food per year in this country. That is terrific. Now, your company, again, let's mention your company's name again.
Food, Fire Plus Knives.
Food, Fire Plus Knives is a company that has a list, like a long list of chefs from around the country that will provide food for people in their homes. Is that correct?
Correct. They actually go into the homes and they cook meals for them. It can be for, just an individual family, or it can be for an event, but it's coming into your home using your kitchen, bringing all the ingredients with, and then once they're done cooking and serving, they clean up the kitchen and then they leave.
Gosh,
And
come to my home tomorrow night. Sign me up.
well, they
love
love to sit and talk with a lot of their we call them hosts. So when they ask us to come into their home, they love the fact that they can teach them, whether it's about their sauces that they're making or how they're preparing things. It's a very interactive experience, and so they get something out of it because they get to see people up close and personal, which they don't get to do in the restaurants. And then the people, they get to ask questions for people that are professionally trained, in the industry. These are chefs that have gone through culinary school and they're executive chefs and know what they're doing out there.
I love it, love it, love it. That is so awesome and quite unique to say, no doubt. Now, how does a company like yours that has chefs, again, that provide this great service, get involved with such a big undertaking? How did you get involved?
Oh, with Rescued? Well, so I used to work at Cargill, and I knew some of the people that were there, and someone posted on LinkedIn that they were starting this startup. And I immediately raised my hands and I said, if you're looking for people that are always looking for ways to spread, whether it's produce or any other items that are out there that they can, take and get them from farm to table, we would love to be part of this. And when I brought it up to the chefs, we have every other week we have a meeting with our chefs, and I said, wouldn't this be fun to be part of? And they all said, this is something that we believe in day by day. They never, sometimes they don't have access to this type of activity either. So it's one of those things that will make, I think make a difference for us, here in the US. We're a US based company right now. But the bigger impact, if we can keep some of that stuff out of the landfill, we're doing something that we couldn't do before. So we're this tiny little startup, and we're joining the startup, but they're backed by these bigger companies that believe in this mission to stop some of this stuff from happening.
Well, God bless you. And this is so appropriate that this is being launched at this season, in the Christmas season and the beginning of the new year of 2023. We're going to keep a close watch because I really think this is a great endeavor for not only people in need, but just for the planet in general to be able to, conserve. I think we need to be better stewards of our of the earth and the resources that we have. So anytime we can do that, I just applaud something like this whenever I get a chance. And this is what the other side of medicine is all about: is trying to make sure that we do take care of the resources that we've been provided and be good stewards. That's what we are here on the other side of medicine. So thank you so much for doing that. And what do you see the vision for this? Where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, my hope is, first of all, what are the things that we can do, to eliminate the pieces with the landfill? For us, our company is profit based, so we're out there to make sure that what we're using, the waste doesn't happen. But there's also the other side of the fence of, if we fix those supply chains and work on those pieces, the benefits to, the shelters and some of those other areas that have food needs and are really working in their communities to bring, I saw some just incredible, incredible people that were telling us their stories when we went to the launch for this. And, they're just looking at how can we get more food in people's mouths. And for them, this is, it's their charity mission and what they're doing. I think that there's so many places this will play. It'll play well for us because it's what we believe in and how we're going to do things, but we're doing it for profit. They're doing it, altruistically, but they're doing it for the betterment of people. And again, how do you keep, it's a travesty to have that much food wasted.
Absolutely. So this is really such a big undertaking. What are there some projections that the group as a whole, the 30 organizations and people, are there some projections that they have and how much food they can save over the next year, for example?
So Google and company are working on the data analytics right now. If you can imagine the amount of data around this and gathering it, between now and February, we're hoping to have those projections in place. You know, it would have probably done some. You called me a couple hours ago, so we did. I didn't have a chance to reach out and get any numbers from anybody. But by February, we've got different plans that we're doing, and then we're doing the launch in Austin, Texas, actually, in February. And so by then, we are going to have marching orders as to how that pilot will go, and then how can we expand it out across the US, and then they've got visions to do it across the world.
Mm, that's exciting. It's gonna be launched in Austin, Texas, in February. And how's that gonna look? Could you kind of describe how that's gonna look like?
Yeah, so basically they have a piece of software, and they're all of the food distributors that are going to participate in this, they will be hooked up to it, and they'll be able to post on, it's almost like a marketplace. So they'll be able to post those food overages that they have and the locations that they are. Those of us, like, my chefs, and then if it's local restaurants or it's the food pantries, will be able to go out to that website, see that what's available that day, be able to purchase it, get it, go pick it up from whatever depot that it's at, and then be able to utilize it. So it's there's a lot of logistics that are associated with that, and that's what the teams behind the scenes right now are working at in preparation for that launch. So it's kind of like, being the Amazon of you know reused and rescued product.
Mm, yeah, it's almost hard to believe that much food eventually could be totally distributed in a fashion that gets into the mouths of people who really need it. There's so many hungry people right here in the United States
Mhm.
that will be able to really make a huge difference by your efforts. So, oh my gosh, I'm just so excited for this. When I heard about it, I said, especially during this Christmas season, that this is a perfect time to be on the other side of medicine. So I thank you for coming on. It's just great to have you here. And well, like, there's going to have to be transportation for this food. There are going to have to be people to pick it up. Are there organizations right now that are we able to plug into this and help out with all that? I'm certain that there's different organizations be happy to, but what are some of those organizations that you see will be part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be companies that have, refrigeration and depots where it can be ghost kitchens. There's different places, even where there's real estate that used to be restaurants. Can we repurpose that to utilize their refrigerator, their storage space as a depot place where people can come in and pick this stuff up? Of course, for the larger orders that somebody has, hopefully those can be dropped off. And this would apply not so much to private chefs because we're kind of small individual chefs doing this. But when you think about a food pantry, can they get big enough orders that the truck will come to them? But in between, where are those depots going to be? So, like I said, it could be there's a whole bunch of companies that are doing like ghost kitchens. They've got industrial refrigerators, industrial freezers where they could store, and then our chefs can go and pick that stuff up from those places.
Well,
Otherwise, they'll have to pick up other warehouses where that refrigeration, as well as you know, how do could it? I mean, I don't know, where the distribution centers will be, but we'll have to work all of that out.
now, is there plans for delivering this food to people that need it? Is it going to be the raw foods or is it going to be prepared foods? How does that play out?
It's a combination. For someone like us, for Food Fire Knives, we're not going to be using anything but the raw ingredients. We really aren't into going and buying processed food. That's not what our business is. Many restaurants will be the same. However, I'll give one of the companies told us this really interesting story. Never realized, during the pandemic, Girl Scout cookies. Guess what? When we were in the pandemic, the Girl Scouts couldn't sit outside of the stores. All of those cookies that they had manufactured and built, there was nowhere for them to go.
Hmm.
So one of these companies, not Rescued, but because Rescued wasn't in existence yet, but there was another company that does some of this refurbishment. They grabbed those cookies and then got them over to some of the prisons. And so then the prisons at least benefited from those, and the Girl Scout Foundation didn't end up throwing those over into landfills. So it's just
Well, for me,
we would have never
again,
thought about that, right? That's processed food. And so, it's not something we're interested in,
right, I
but it
get it.
was an interesting story that there's
Sure,
another avenue for even processed food to go somewhere.
sure, sure. Well, this is going to be again a huge undertaking, but it sounds like you got some big players like Google and Cargo. And what are some of the other players in this?
Cisco's there, US Foods,
Oh, that's some
yeah,
big conglomerates that are really helping out to make this thing really work.
yeah.
That's pretty exciting. So, okay, so let's shift just for a few minutes. We might come back talking a little bit more about this, but let's talk a little bit more about what your company does because I really am intrigued by the fact that your chefs go into the home. Is this affordable for somebody that is the average person, or is this more for people who are like higher level incomes?
So we have ranges. All of our menus, you can have those comfort food menus, you can have the, prefix, really high expensive, and there's menus everywhere in between. Many of the people that use our services, they don't necessarily want to go into restaurants anymore, whether it's because of COVID or maybe their kids or something else. When you have a special event and want a nice meal, you know, it all depends. If you're people that are also, bringing in wine and alcohol and that sort of thing, coming into your home, we don't supply alcohol, but they can go out and buy it. It's a lot cheaper for the alcohol side, and that kind of balances out somewhat on the meal side. So we're like a fine dining restaurant. You're not going to
Yeah.
go and have somebody in. We're for the people that want to have a nice meal once in a while and maybe not go to a restaurant. Do this instead.
Okay, that's really interesting twist on it. I wasn't looking at it from that perspective, but that I think that really could work really well because, as you said, a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't want to go to a restaurant. Maybe they're incapacitated or they, again, because of COVID, they don't want to get out as much anymore. Then they could have that fine dining experience and come to their home and be able to still enjoy something special for an occasion or for that weeknight out for a date night or something of that nature for husband and wife. This is really a cool idea. I really think it's kind of neat. I love it. Now,
Well,
are
and,
you
and
at,
think about your kids. Think about kids. If you go to a fine dining restaurant with your kids, what do you do with them? They're running around and that sort of thing. If you have it at your home, you have the ability to kind of flex that out. And some of the people, they'll order. We do have, kid-size portions and that sort of thing, or they'll just order pizza or something for the kids, and then they, can be off at the dining table having a really nice meal, and somebody's cooked can serve them, and then they clean up the kitchen, and we get a lot of compliments that they have clean kitchens. They like that.
you guys, your chefs actually clean up the kitchens when they're done.
Yep,
That's
they do.
amazing. That is amazing.
Mhm.
Do you have any stories about people's experiences with this service?
Yeah, I have an emotional, really. It's a bit of a sad story, but also really one that just touched my heart, and it happened this summer. We had a lady contact us and said she wanted to do something with her family, and she didn't think she was in her last stages of cancer, and she said, I really can't do a long period of time out in a restaurant. Would really like to do this with my kids. My son's going to turn 18 in September. I don't think I'm going to make it. Could we do this? So we had a chef go out and handle it. Wonderful. The chef was just so touched at being part of an 18th birthday party. It was celebration. It wasn't sadness. Maybe there was a little bit of tears here and there because there it's hard. Couple months later, there's a company called Dream Foundation. They reached out to us and they said this woman hadn't passed away. It was in late October. She hadn't passed away yet, luckily. And she said she had such a wonderful time. Could the Dream Foundation actually bring her last wish to get her kids together one more time at her house? She was, really close. And so we made the arrangements, and she passed away 4 days before the dinner. And so, but that summer dinner was so magical, and that she thought we were so wonderful that she wanted us back. I get teary thinking about it because it's like, that is so cool that you invited us back because this was part of something you wanted for your celebration of life.
Wow, that's very, very moving experience that you guys had, and that's got to motivate you to continue on and be able to provide this great service. I love it. It's just really,
It's
I
just,
hadn't thought
yeah.
about how this could be used in so many different ways, but now my mind's starting to change it
Well, and
to click.
we have fun ones with micro weddings and bachelorette parties, and I have one of my guys down in Phoenix. He's got a Harry Potter menu. So I mean, there's whimsical and there's cuisines, and
Well,
so you,
that's
you
cool.
can really craft all these different experiences into what you as a customer want it to be.
That is amazing. So yeah, so where do people find your service?
They just go online, www.foodfireknives.com. It's as easy as that.
Yeah. And are you nationwide?
So we are in about 50 cities right now. And so we are continuing to grow. Last year we were in 9, so we've grown quite a bit this
Wow.
year.
That's
We're
that's
on
that's good growth.
we're Yep, East Coast, West Coast, and then, we're in the Midwest and
Are you in
some other
Cleveland,
cities.
Ohio?
We are. We absolutely
Awesome.
are.
Well,
Yes,
we'll have to kind of mention that at some future shows as well. Let people know because I am
absolutely.
located in Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. And how many chefs do you have here in Cleveland? Is there more than one?
No, I think there's only one, but then we have one that kind of comes over from one of the other cities if we have need. Again, we're not going to do mass hiring of chefs. We really want that special experience. So our chefs, we've got about 160 chefs on board right now, across the 50 cities, and it's good. You get the experience that we want our customers to have.
Mhm. Great. Well, this is all this talk about food is making me hungry. So I know you're gonna share some delicious recipes with us. Can we dive into that right now? Is that okay?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. So what are you gonna share with us?
Well, we talked a little bit about, why don't we start off with the cauliflower steak? So, cauliflower steak is something that's super easy, really farm to table. All of it is vegan based, so it's not only vegetarian, but it hits that vegan need. So, you basically take a whole head of cauliflower, cut it into four steaks. So, wash it, cut it into four steaks, not too hard. And then you just take some olive oil, red pepper flakes, garlic, of course, and mix that all together, salt and pepper, and then you basically put it in the oven. And so you put all of the steaks down on parchment paper, put it in the oven, take half of the oil mixture, put it on top, let it cook for about 10-15 minutes, flip it over, spread the rest of the oil mixture on it, do it another 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can serve it. And, sometimes we serve it with hummus on the side. Sometimes we serve it with a gravy. You can do a mushroom gravy that's just beautiful with it. So that's one.
Yeah, that sounds good. Now, for our listeners who say, well, I'm not really sure, I'm not a very good cook, how much olive oil would you use approximately for one head of cauliflower?
Yeah, use about a half cup. So you're really making just basically a light sauce. So it's half a cup of olive oil, probably maybe about a teaspoon. I like red pepper flakes, so I go for a tablespoon of red pepper because I just like spice.
Mhm.
Salt and pepper to taste. Make sure you do 2 to 3 I mean, back to the onions and garlic. I like shallots, so I like putting shallots in it. One shallot, and then also, like I said, 2 to 3 heads of garlic go really well with it. And then
Mhm.
that aroma as it's in the oven, 400 degrees, it fills up the house with a lot of nice smells, and the taste is wonderful.
And how long do you bake that for approximately?
Yeah, so each side is about 15 minutes.
About
So
15
the
minutes?
first, yeah, you put it in 15 minutes, flip it, and then you put the rest of the oil. So split the oil in half, the oil mixture. And
Mhm, mhm.
then, after 15 minutes, fork it to make sure it's tender, and then it's done. You can also throw it on the grill. That's another way to do it. You actually, if you're going to throw it on the grill, though, definitely want to make sure you've got tinfoil underneath, and then, make sure, because otherwise the oil would create a oil fire.
Mhm, mhm. Now we gotta warn our listeners that red pepper flakes are hot, they're spicy. So, yeah, I personally like spicy food, so I would probably end up using the tablespoon myself, but just go easy if you're not used to spice. And then you can always add more as you become more accustomed to the spice.
Well, there's another option that you can go if you're not in the spice realm of hot. You could actually go and add a teaspoon of lemon pepper instead.
Okay, that
So
sounds really
lemon
good too.
pepper would be nice and bright and keep it. And then, with that, I probably would also throw a little bit of thyme in.
Okay,
Just some fresh thyme just to give it a little more seasoning. So then it's not hot, but it's nice lemony, thymy sort of flavor.
that sounds really, really good. Okay, well, we had talked a little bit about cauliflower mashed potatoes. I was telling you, I went to a restaurant recently. A friend of mine owns a restaurant called Town Hall here in Cleveland, absolutely delicious natural food restaurant. And I had their cauliflower mashed potatoes, and they were outstanding. I couldn't believe that's the first time I ever tried them. So I just said, "This is delicious." So I asked you, and you graciously said, "Yeah, I could tell you how to do that." So could you explain that?
Sure. So, first of all, you want, basically a Dutch oven pot. So, bigger pot, maybe something that you put spaghetti in, or, so you want to have that pot there. What you'll do is you'll take a head of cauliflower and you'll chop it up. So you want the flowerets, probably about this big, no bigger than that. Chop those up, and then you're going to put them in the pot with water. And you want to fill the water just maybe a quarter of an inch over the top of the cauliflower. And then you're going to sprinkle some, I usually use coarse salt, so basically just plain salt, not table salt. I usually use some sort of coarse salt. Bring it to a boil. Let it go for 12 to 15 minutes. You again want to fork it to see if it's smooth, or not smooth, if it's soft.
Mhm.
And then what you'll do is you'll take it out. I typically actually drain it. So you want to have a thin, sieve strainer so that you can put it in. Drain a little bit of the water if you have any excess. Sometimes you don't. Put that into a bowl. And then what I do with it is vegan butter. So quarter of a cup of vegan butter. And I put that in a separate saucepan to start off with. So mine, I typically use lemon. Again, I do really like lemon pepper. It works really well in it. So in that saucepan, I'll put a little bit of thyme, maybe a half teaspoon of thyme,
Is this
lemon
fresh
pepper.
or is this dry time?
I prefer fresh,
Okay.
so I prefer, and then you'll have your lemon butter, not lemon butter, you'll have your vegan butter, and then you'll also, I'm trying to remember what else I put in there, because I know what I do. I also put, I'm such a garlic fan.
Oh, I love
I will
garlic.
put, I will put 4 or 5 cloves of garlic in.
Sure.
And there's two ways you can do that as well. Some people really like the whole garlic because then it becomes more mushy, but I always like to chop it up and mix it in with the mash. So once that's all melted in the small saucepan,
Now, is this cooked garlic or is this just raw garlic?
I prefer the raw, but
Mhm.
that I'm more into I like things a little underdone versus overdone.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, if you want the more cooked version of it, I would actually take your garlic, throw it in a little bit of olive oil, get that to the point that it's soft, and then throw it in the vegan butter and melt all that down.
Mhm.
Then just pour it over the cauliflower that you've got that's cooked, and then you just mix it up with a fork. I have used a press, and so I've got one. So I use a press that actually, when I use my potatoes, it ends up not so starchy. But a fork just works great too.
Mhm. When we had the cauliflower mashed potatoes, it was like really like whipped mashed potatoes. So you
Mhm.
don't use a beater.
I have. It all depends on the consistency that you want. My family, when it comes to mashed potatoes, they're really mashed potato people, and I've tried
Mhm.
faking them out with cauliflower. It doesn't work. So
Mhm.
if I've got the little more rougher with the fork mash, they're more likely to eat the cauliflower mash.
Gotcha. I was
One other,
surprised. I was surprised how amazing comparable it was to mashed potatoes. I mean, it had
it
a little,
is.
a little bit different flavor, but it was the mouthfeel and the taste was similar, but not exactly. But it was extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, in my family, I mix and match, and it's because I'm not a vegan. We will use butter within it as well. There's another thing that you can do too is if you really want the creaminess to come out, take one or two Yukon potatoes and also mix those in as part of the mash.
Mhm.
It's just a creamy, and then you do use a beater for that, and you
Gotcha.
beat the two of them
Mhm.
up. that is a beautiful mixture as well.
Sounds good. And just for our listeners and for yourself as well, there is a delicious vegan butter called Mayokas. Have you ever seen it?
Yes. Mhm.
That to me is one of the closest things to real butter, and it's got such a distinct, delicious flavor. I just absolutely love it. It's
Mhm.
cultured, so it's very similar to what yogurt provides with the beneficial bacteria, and it's really really good. It's one of my favorite go to for my vegan recipes.
Great. Great. Yeah.
Myokis, and they have it both in the salted and unsalted. So it's really, really amazing taste to it, and I just love it. So we have one more recipe you were going to share. Did you come up with something, or we were going to just do with that Indian? What did you decide?
So I'm actually married to an Indian, and they
Oh,
are
with a name like Gandhi, I would think so.
have to go back to it's Indian is one of my favorite foods,
Oh, me
and
too. I'm in. I'm in.
yeah. Well, and what's funny is, so my mother-in-law is she's just this short little ball of energy, and I mean, she does not like spice at all, you know. So she's taught me how to make chana masala that's very flavorful, but isn't spicy. And it's so simple. So you basically start off with a mash. So you take tomatoes, you take garlic again, and now if you're depending on what type of religion you are in the Indian religion, sometimes you don't use garlic and onion because they don't do anything under the ground. But garlic and onion, they take that and mash that into a paste along with the tomatoes. Okay.
So you
With
take
that,
fresh tomato.
fresh tomatoes. Yep.
Okay, so
Roma tomatoes.
let's give some
Roma, three.
let's give some proportions, just
Yep.
general.
Yep. So three Roma tomatoes. Okay.
Okay, those are the oblong ones, the Roma.
Oblong ones. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so three oblong tomatoes. Okay.
Yep. And then you take that, you take fresh, and I always use sweet onions. They tend to, especially, she's 85, her stomach and everything, she needs a little more, sensitive. And so the sweet onion seems to not upset her stomach as much. So I'll use half a sweet onion in it. And then I also put in, again, 3 to 4 cloves of garlic with that. I put in, and this is to taste. I use fresh ginger,
Hmm.
and so maybe half a tablespoon is a lot. So you
Okay.
might want to go into maybe a teaspoon of ginger, but you do want some of that fresh ginger taste
Hmm.
within it.
Okay.
Chili pepper, again, chili pepper, when we make it with her, she doesn't use chili pepper. Instead, we just use salt and pepper with her. If you
Hmm.
like spice, add in the chili pepper piece
Okay.
within it. So very simple base, and you grind that in a food processor. Get everything all ground up into a paste, and then you put that in a pan, and you'll put in 1 can of garbanzo beans.
Okay.
Okay. And then put that in, and then you want to have enough water in there that it kind of turns into a gravy. Okay. And you're going to heat that up and you're going to cook it probably 7 to 9 minutes at medium. And then it's just a nice solid gravy with the garbanzo beans just heated through because they're, already cooked. They don't have to be deep. And then you serve that. You can serve it with a naan bread, or if it's an Indian bread, a puri bread. Those are my two favorites that I use with it.
Hmm. It's very similar to a Lebanese flatbread, the naan.
The
Very
naan
similar.
is, yeah,
Very
yeah.
similar. Yep.
Hmm.
That sounds amazingly delicious, and I am excited to try that because that's one of the cuisines, and I love international cuisines. The ethnic cuisines are just so flavorful. American food is oftentimes is so dull. It's the same thing over and over. But the ethnic cuisines with so many of the herbs and spices is just so much fun to cook and then so delicious. So Indian foods for me has been a challenge because it seems to be so out there with, you go into an Indian store and they got just shelves and shelves and shelves of spices and you're overwhelmed. But you've simplified it down to something that's doable.
Well, and it fits a lot of the American palate as well. You can add, and you can go to this Indian spice store and, masala spice. I love Indian food, so we'll make a batch for my grand or my mother-in-law, and that's great. It's not super spicy, but then we put in our side, we'll add curry powder to it until it's to the heat that I like, which can be pretty hot. And you can
Sure.
also add jalapenos into it, if you really want some spice within it and
Good. Well, people are
sauce
gonna,
things up.
yeah, people are gonna want variety, so that's all good suggestions. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This has been a really wonderful experience to have you here with us today. I've learned so much. I'm excited about the um, the rescued organization, rescued.org. I'm also excited for your company. This is a way for people to be able to enjoy a delicious celebration at home for either a couple or maybe even a party. If you have a special event, you'll bring a chef in and they'll be able to prepare the food, clean up the mess, and
Yep.
it's all done for you. That sounds wonderful. And again, your company is
Food, fire, plus knives.
Food Fire Plus Nice. And this is again, how do people get in touch with you?
Sure. www.foodfireknives.com.
Great. And what about Rescued? How do people get in touch with and keep in touch with Rescued?
Yeah, so you can take a look. Rescued is it's rescue.org, so www.rescued.org, reskued.org. And so they just launched their website a little bit ago, to talk about what they're doing. And I think they'll probably have more updates, out on news feeds as well as LinkedIn as they get going. So we're a recipient of it. We're really excited that they chose us as the private chef group to work with them. So I can't wait to see what happens here.
I can't wait to see what happens either. We're going to keep in touch. And Kim, we'd love to have you back. And I'm kind of looking at it for a selfish reason because I really want to get another Indian recipe out of you. But at the same time, I really want to keep in touch with what's going on with Rescued for sure. And then I'm going to let people know about your company as well. So thank you so much. And you've been so kind and so tolerant to put up with the technology mess that we had. We couldn't get Kim's voice to come on her speaker, but we finally got it. So thank you once again. I wish you and your family a blessed Christmas. And I hope that you enjoyed tonight as much as I have.
I really did, and I thank you so much for inviting me. This is I'm so excited to find that there's groups like this out there, and you have a happy holiday, and I hope everyone on the podcast has one too. Make sure you hug those loved ones. Everything goes by too fast, and you got to spend some time with family. It's family
That's,
first, man.
that's right. I'm going to go spend time with my wife right now when we're done. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. And I hope that you get in touch with Kim. That's Kim Gandhi with Food, Fire, and Knives.
There you
And
go.
check it out and see all the work that she's doing with and their company's doing with Rescued. So once again, good night, everybody. Good night, Kim. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
We'll see
Bye
you
bye.
next week.